Assalamu alaikum student, welcome to chemistry series of class 10th. Today we are going to discuss the short question number 5 to 9 and long questions 1 to 3 from unit 6, which is salt. So let's start it. Question number 5 is list 3 salts that are generally soluble in water. वो थ्री salts जो generally soluble होते हैं water, that is sodium chloride, NaCl, potassium nitrate, and copper sulfate. Okay. Question number 6 is what happens to the ions in an ionic compound when it dissolves in water? When an ionic compound is dissolved in water, what happens with its ions? When an ionic compound dissolves in water, the positive and negative ions separate from crystal lattice and disperse uniformly in the solution. वो क्या करते हैं वाटर मॉलिक्यूल्स जब भी किसी आयनिक कंपाउंड को वाटर के साथ डिसॉल्व किया जाए तो उसके नेगेटिव और पॉजिटिव जो आयंस होते हैं वो अलग अलग हो जाते हैं, सेपरेट हो जाते हैं। वो जो क्रिस्टल लैटिस स्ट्रक्चर था कि एक नेगेटिव चार्ज के अराउंड सारे पॉजिटिव चार्ज और एक पॉजिटिव चार्ज के अराउंड सारे नेगेटिव चार्ज एक वेल अरेंज्ड 3D स्ट्रक्चर बना रहे थे, वो ब्रेक हो जाता है और आयन सेपरेट होके डिस्पर्स हो जाते हैं यूनिफॉर्मली, एक ही मतलब इक्वली डिस्ट्रीब्यूट हो जाते हैं सोल्यूशन में. Water molecules from these ions, a process called hydration. Each and every ion get a water molecule. इस process को hydration कहा जाता है. Okay, allowing them to move freely and conduct electricity. इस तरह से वो सारे आयंस अलग होके वाटर मॉलिक्यूल्स के डिसॉल्व होके मूव करना शुरू हो जाते हैं और इस प्रोसीजर में इलेक्ट्रिसिटी भी कंडक्ट करते हैं. A few examples are sodium chloride dissolved in water give Na पॉजिटिव एंड Cl नेगेटिव आयंस. जब हम NaCl सॉलिड को वाटर के साथ डिसॉल्व करते हैं तो आयंस अलग अलग हो जाते हैं, Na पॉजिटिव चार्ज एंड Cl नेगेटिव चार्ज. Okay, question number 7 is do you think that most carbonates are soluble in water? No, most carbonates are insoluble in water. Only the carbonates of sodium, potassium, and ammonium are soluble, while the carbonates of other metals remain insoluble. Mostly carbonates are insoluble. सिर्फ सोडियम, पोटाशियम और अमोनियम के कार्बोनेट्स हैं जो soluble होते हैं. बाकी जो तमाम कार्बोनेट्स होते हैं वो insoluble होते हैं. Like calcium carbonate is insoluble in water, whereas sodium carbonate is soluble. ठीक है. Why? Carbonates usually have a high lattice energy. Water can't supply enough hydration energy to pull the lattice apart. उसमें हाई लैटिस एनर्जी होती है और वाटर मॉलिक्यूल्स इतनी स्ट्रॉन्ग हाइड्रेशन एनर्जी प्रोवाइड नहीं कर सकते कि वो उनको ब्रेक कर सकें, except for alkali metals and ammonium ones. Okay. Question number 8. How can you prepare a soluble salt using an excess of insoluble base? हम soluble salt कैसे बना सकते हैं by using an insoluble base? A soluble salt can be prepared by adding an excess of insoluble base such as metal oxide or hydroxide to a dilute acid. The base reacts with acid to form salt and water. The excess base ensures that all acid is completely neutralized. The mixture is then filtered to remove the unreacted base and the salt solution is crystallized to obtain pure salts. Examples: adding excess copper oxide to dilute sulfuric acid produces copper sulfate solution. On crystallization, blue clusters of copper sulfates are obtained. This method is commonly used for preparing soluble salts of less reactive metals. Okay, इस मेथड में लेस रिएक्टिव जो सॉल्ट्स होती हैं वो यूज की जाती हैं और जो बेस्ड जो इनसॉल्युबल होते हैं जैसे मेटल ऑक्साइड्स और हाइड्रोक्साइड कार्बोनेट्स वो यूज की जाते हैं और जो सॉल्ट होता है वो सॉल्युबल होता है. ठीक है. क्वेश्चन नंबर 9 इज which salts are typically soluble according to general solubility rules? कौन कौन सी salts हैं जो typically soluble होती हैं? According to solubility rules, the following salts are soluble in water. All salts of sodium potassium and ammonium are soluble, while all nitrates and acetates are also soluble. ठीक है. Most chlorides, bromides and iodides except those of silver and lead. जो chlorides, bromides और iodides होते हैं वो भी soluble होते हैं except silver and lead. ठीक है. Most sulfates except those of barium, lead and calcium. सारे sulfates भी soluble होते हैं just barium sulfate, lead sulfate and calcium sulfate के अलावा. ठीक है. Now let's start long questions. Question number 1 is explain the process of preparing a soluble salt using titration. Include a detailed description of steps involved. Titration is the laboratory method used to prepare a soluble salt by carefully reacting an acid with an alkali. Since both reactants are soluble and no visible reaction like precipitate occur, an indicator is used to detect the end point of neutralization. ठीक है, इसमें इंडिकेटर यूज किया जाता है, कलर चेंज हो जाता है तो पता चल जाता है कि न्यूट्रलाइजेशन हो चुकी है. apparatus and reagents. Burette, stand, clamp, pipette जो 25 सेंटीमीटर क्यूब की होनी चाहिए, पिपेट फिल्टर, कॉनिकल फ्लास्क, फनल, इवेपोरेटिंग बेसन, ट्राइपोड और गैस, जेंटल हीट सोर्स, ग्लास रॉड, वॉच ग्लास और टिल्ट टेस्ट. रेजेंट्स कौन कौन से होते हैं? डाइल्यूट HCl इस्तेमाल किया जाता है, हम एग्जांपल इसी की ले रहे हैं. NaOH सोल्यूशन इस्तेमाल किया जाता है और फिनोल्फथलीन एज इंडिकेटर यूज किया जाता है और डिस्टिल्ड वाटर यूज किया जाता है. स्टेप्स ऑफ प्रोसेस. सबसे पहला स्टेप क्या है? measuring the alkali. A known volume of alkali solution, for example sodium hydroxide, is measured using a pipette and transferred into a clean conical flask. Adding indicator. A few drops of suitable indicator such as phenolphthalein or methyl orange are added to the alkali to show a color change at the end point. Filling the burette with acid. The burette is filled with acid solution जो HCl होता है of known concentration. इसकी concentration भी मालूम होना चाहिए, मालूम होना चाहिए. Performing the titration. The acid is slowly added from the burette into the alkali while continuously swirling the conical flask. उसको हिलाते रहना है. The indicator changes color when the reaction between the acid and alkali is complete, showing neutralization. जैसे ही उनका reaction complete होगा, phenolphthalein color change करके indicate कर देगा. This point is called the end point, जहाँ पे color show होता है. Repeating for accuracy. The titration is repeated several times to obtain close readings for exact volume of acid required. Preparing the salt solution without indicator. The process is repeated again without indicator using the exact measured volumes of acid and alkali. This prevents contamination of a salt solution with the indicator. अच्छा, हमने इंडिकेटर यूज करके मल्टीपल रिपीटिंग एक्सपेरिमेंट्स के थ्रू एग्जैक्ट उनके वॉल्यूम्स हमने निकाले कि कितना एसिड होना चाहिए और कितना अल्कली होना चाहिए. फिर एंड पे विदाउट इंडिकेटर डायरेक्टली हम उतनी वॉल्यूम ऑफ एसिड और अल्कली यूज करके अपना सॉल्ट बनाएंगे. क्यों? क्योंकि ताकि सॉल्ट हमें प्योर मिल सके विदाउट द कंटेमिनेशन ऑफ इंडिकेटर जो फिनोल्फथलीन यूज किया था. क्रिस्टलाइजेशन. The resulting neutral solution is heated gently to evaporate water and then left to cool, allowing salt crystal to form. उसको फिर water को evaporate, वो क्योंकि solution होता है उसको evaporate करके हमें salt के crystals मिल जाते हैं. Example reaction. NaOH plus aqueous HCl को मिलाया था और NaCl aqueous बना है और H2O liquid बना है. Here sodium chloride is soluble salt prepared by titration. Question number 2 is discuss the properties of salts that make them solid at standard temperature and pressure and have high melting point. हमने वो salts की properties discuss करनी है जो उसको solid रखती हैं at standard temperature and pressure. Salts are ionic compounds formed by neutralizing reaction between the acid and a base. Their physical properties at standard temperature and pressure and their high melting points can be explained on the basis of ionic bonding. Properties of salts. Solid at standard temperature and pressure. Salts are made up of positive cations and negative anions held together by strong electrostatic forces of attraction. These forces form a giant ionic lattice structure which is very stable. Due to this strong bonding, salts exist as hard crystalline solids at standard temperature and pressure. high melting and boiling point. A large amount of heat energy is required to break the strong ionic bonds between oppositely charged ions. This is why salts such as sodium chloride have high melting and boiling points compared to covalent compounds. Brittleness. Though solid salts are often brittle, when force is applied, like charges come close and repel, causing the crystal to break. Okay, example, sodium chloride will be solid at standard temperature and pressure and with a melting point of about 801 degrees Celsius due to its strong ionic lattice. Strong structure होता है. Question number 3. Describe the solubility rules for salts and explain the exceptions for chlorides, carbonates and hydroxides. The solubility of salts in water follows certain general rules. These rules help us to predict whether a salt will dissolve or remain as a solid, insoluble in water. General solubility rules are all solids of sodium, potassium and ammonium are soluble. For example, NaCl, potassium sulfate, ammonium carbonate. All nitrates are soluble. For example, potassium or silver nitrate. ठीक है. Most chlorides, bromides and iodides are soluble. For example, NaCl, potassium iodide. Most sulfates are soluble. For example, magnesium sulfates and ammonium sulfate. Important exceptions. Chlorides. Most chlorides are soluble except silver chloride and lead chloride, which are insoluble in water. Carbonates generally insoluble in water. Exception sodium carbonate. Most generally carbonates क्या होते हैं, insoluble होते हैं, लेकिन sodium carbonate, potassium carbonate और ammonium carbonate are soluble. ठीक है. Hydroxides mostly insoluble in water, but sodium hydroxide, potassium hydroxide and ammonium hydroxides are soluble. Calcium hydroxide is sparingly soluble. ये कुछ हद तक soluble होता है. Conclusion. Soluble salts, all sodium, potassium, ammonium salts and all nitrates. Insoluble salts, most carbonates and hydroxides. Exception, must always be remembered for accurate predictions. Okay students, that's all for today. If you understood everything which we have discussed today, then like it, comment down, share with your friends and subscribe to this channel. We will discuss remaining long questions and think tank section in next video. Till then, Allah Hafiz.